Marcus Chen adjusted his tactical vest one more time as he stood outside the ornate doors of the Zephyrian embassy. The brass nameplate on his chest read, Human Security Specialist, in both English and the flowing script of the Zephyrian language. After 3 years of working diplomatic security, he thought he'd seen everything. Apparently, he was wrong. The assignment briefing had been straightforward enough. Princess Lyrale of the Zephyrian royal house was visiting Earth for trade negotiations. As one of the few humans who spoke fluent Zephyrian and had combat experience, Marcus had been hand-picked to serve as her personal bodyguard during her stay. Simple enough, right? The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the most beautiful creature Marcus had ever seen. Princess Lyrale stood about 6 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer like moonlight on water. Her hair was a cascade of silver that moved as if it were alive, and her eyes were the deep purple of Earth's twilight sky. She wore a flowing dress that somehow managed to look both regal and practical, with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and dance in the light. "You must be Marcus," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that made his name sound like poetry. "I am Princess Lyrale, but please call me Lyra. I have heard much about human warriors. I confess I am quite curious about your species." Marcus gave a professional bow. "Your Highness, it's an honor to serve as your protector during your visit to Earth. I've reviewed your itinerary and I've prepared security protocols for each venue." Lyra stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could smell something like jasmine and starlight. "How wonderfully thorough you are. Tell me, Marcus, do all human males possess such dedication to duty?" There was something in her tone that made Marcus's collar feel tight. He maintained his professional composure, though his heartbeat quickened. "I take my responsibilities seriously, Your Highness." "Lyra," she corrected with a smile that revealed teeth like perfect pearls. "And I do hope you won't be too serious all the time. I find serious men so intriguing." The first day passed without major incident, though Marcus found himself constantly aware of Lyra's presence. She had a way of moving that was almost hypnotic, and every time she spoke to him, she seemed to find excuses to touch his arm or stand just a little too close. During the morning trade summit, she kept glancing at him instead of paying attention to the boring economic discussions. When she caught him looking back, she'd wink or give him that pearl-bright smile. "Is it always this tedious?" she whispered to him during a particularly dry presentation about rare earth mineral exports. "Diplomacy often is, Your Highness," Marcus replied quietly. "Lyra," she corrected again, "and perhaps after this is over you could show me some of your human entertainment. I'm particularly curious about what you call movies." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I'm sure the cultural attaché would be happy to arrange a viewing." "Oh, but I'd much rather have you explain them to me. I find your voice so soothing." The afternoon brought a tour of the lunar research facilities, which required a shuttle flight to Earth's moon. Marcus had done this trip dozens of times, but watching Lyra's face light up as she saw Earth from space made it feel new again. "Magnificent," she breathed, pressing her hand against the viewport. "Your world is so blue. On Zephyr, our oceans are silver and our skies are gold. I wonder how it would feel to swim in blue water under a blue sky." "Perhaps that could be arranged," Marcus said before he could stop himself. She turned to him with delight. "Really? Oh, Marcus, that would be wonderful, though I confess I've never seen a human male in swimming attire. Are you as impressive as your reputation suggests?" Marcus coughed and focused intently on his security tablet. "I'll see what I can arrange through proper channels." The lunar facility tour went smoothly until the return trip. Marcus was reviewing the next day's schedule when alarms began blaring throughout the shuttle. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "All passengers, please secure yourselves. We're detecting multiple unknown vessels approaching on an intercept course." Marcus immediately moved to Lyra's side, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. Through the viewport, he could see sleek, dark ships emerging from behind the moon's shadow. They bore the angular design of the Krathari Empire, a militant species that had been expanding aggressively through this sector. "Krathari raiders," Marcus muttered, his mind racing through contingencies. The Krathari were humanoid but larger and more muscular than humans, with tough gray skin and a reputation for taking valuable prisoners for their slave markets. A Zephyrian princess would be an incredibly valuable prize. The shuttle shuddered as energy beams flashed past the viewports. "They're jamming our communications," the pilot announced. I'm going to try to make an emergency landing back on the lunar surface. No, Marcus said firmly, moving to the pilot's cabin. That's what they want. They'll corner us on the surface. Can you reach that asteroid field near Luna Station? Maybe, but it'll be dangerous flying. Less dangerous than being captured by Krathari, Marcus replied. He turned to Lyra, who was watching the approaching ships with surprisingly calm eyes. Your Highness, I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that? She nodded, and for the first time since he'd met her, her expression was serious. With my life, Marcus. The shuttle dove toward the asteroid field, weaving between tumbling rocks the size of buildings. The Krathari ships followed, their superior firepower offset by the dangerous terrain. Marcus strapped himself in next to Lyra, checking his gear and planning their next move. When we land, he told her quietly, stay close to me. Don't argue, don't hesitate, just do exactly what I say. The Krathari take prisoners and you would be valuable to them. Lyra placed her hand over his, her skin warm despite its alien coolness. I understand, but Marcus, I want you to know something. What's that? If we die here, I want you to know that in the short time I've known you, you've shown me more honor and kindness than most beings show in a lifetime. I find myself quite fond of you. Before Marcus could respond, the shuttle shook violently and began an emergency landing sequence on a small asteroid. Through the chaos, he caught a glimpse of Lyra's face and realized that her flirting hadn't just been diplomatic politeness or alien curiosity. There was something real in her purple eyes, something that made his chest tight with an emotion he didn't have time to analyze. The shuttle hit the asteroid's surface hard, bouncing twice before coming to rest against a large boulder. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and Marcus could hear the hiss of atmosphere leaking from several small breaches. Emergency suits now, Marcus ordered, helping Lyra into a human-sized environment suit that was comically large on her slender frame. The helmet was too big, but it would keep her alive. Through the cracked viewport, he could see Krathari ships landing nearby. Armored figures were already disembarking, moving toward their crashed shuttle with practiced efficiency. The emergency beacon is broadcasting, the pilot said. Earth defense will know where we are, but it'll be hours before they can mount a rescue. Hours we don't have, Marcus replied. He gathered his gear and checked his weapon. Is there another way out of this shuttle? Emergency hatch in the rear compartment, but it leads right into the asteroid field. No atmosphere, lots of radiation, and nowhere to go. Somewhere to go is better than Krathari slave pens, Marcus said grimly. He turned to Lyra. Your Highness, how do you feel about a spacewalk? Even through the oversized helmet, he could see her smile. With you, it sounds like an adventure. As they prepared to leave the relative safety of the shuttle, Marcus couldn't help but notice that even in mortal danger, Lyra somehow managed to make putting on an emergency suit look graceful. When she struggled with the tool belt, she looked to him for help with eyes that held gratitude and something warmer. Thank you, she said softly as he adjusted her gear, for everything. Thank me when we're safe, Marcus replied, but he found himself holding her gaze longer than was strictly professional. The sound of Krathari boots on the shuttle's hull reminded them both that safety was still a long way off. Marcus sealed his own helmet and checked their limited oxygen supply. 6 hours if they were careful, maybe 7 if they found a way to conserve it. Stay close, he told Lyra as they moved toward the emergency hatch. And whatever happens, don't let go of my hand. She squeezed his gloved fingers. Never, she promised, and Marcus found himself believing her completely. The emergency hatch cycled open, revealing the stark beauty of space beyond. Earth hung in the distance like a blue jewel, while the asteroid field stretched around them like a frozen ocean of rock and ice. Krathari voices echoed from the main shuttle compartment, getting closer. Marcus looked at Lyra one more time, seeing determination and trust in her alien features. Ready. With you always, she replied, and they stepped out into the void together. The asteroid's weak gravity barely held them to its surface as they moved away from the shuttle, using the rocky terrain for cover. Behind them, Marcus could hear the Krathari breaking into the main compartment. They had maybe minutes before the raiders realized their valuable prize had escaped. Where are we going? Lyra asked over their suit communicators. There, Marcus pointed to a larger asteroid about 1 kilometer away. I spotted what might be an old mining station. If we're lucky, it'll have atmosphere and supplies. And if we're not lucky... Marcus checked his weapon one more time and helped Lyra navigate a particularly tricky jump between rocks. Then we make our stand there. At least it'll be somewhere defensible. As they moved through the asteroid field, leaping from rock to rock in the low gravity, Marcus noticed that Lyra moved with surprising grace despite the bulky suit. She never complained, never hesitated, and when she looked at him, there was complete confidence in her purple eyes. "Marcus," she said during one of their brief rest stops, "can I tell you something?" "Of course." "When my father assigned me this diplomatic mission, I thought it would be terribly boring. All trade negotiations and formal dinners. I never expected to find myself floating through space with the most remarkable human I've ever met." Even in their desperate situation, she was still flirting with him. Marcus found it both exasperating and oddly comforting. "Your Highness." Lyra, we need to focus on survival right now." "I am focused," she said seriously. "Focused on the fact that I want to survive this so I can properly thank you for protecting me." Before Marcus could ask what she meant by properly thank, his motion detector chimed. Krathari search teams were spreading through the asteroid field, their powerful suit lights cutting through the darkness like sword beams. "Time to move," Marcus said, helping Lyra to her feet. As they continued their desperate journey through the void, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment had become something much more complicated than he'd bargained for. And from the way Lyra kept finding excuses to touch his arm or catch his eye, he suspected the most dangerous part wasn't going to be the Krathari raiders. The abandoned mining station looked like a metal spider clinging to the asteroid's surface. Its solar panels were cracked and dark, and several sections showed the telltale scorch marks of micrometeorite impacts. But to Marcus, it looked like salvation. "There," he pointed through the swirling debris field. "If that station still has atmosphere, we can hole up and extend our survival time." Lyra nodded, her silver hair floating weightlessly inside the oversized helmet. "And if it doesn't have atmosphere?" "Then we hope Earth defense gets here before our oxygen runs out," Marcus replied grimly. They pushed off from their current asteroid, floating through space toward the mining station. Marcus kept one eye on their destination and another on the Krathari searchlights that swept through the field behind them. The raiders were being methodical, checking every possible hiding spot. "Marcus," Lyra's voice came through the comm with that musical quality that somehow made even their desperate situation feel less dire. "May I ask you something personal?" Now, Marcus guided them around a chunk of ice the size of a car. "When better, we might not have many more opportunities for conversation." Marcus helped her navigate through a particularly dense cluster of debris. "What do you want to know?" "Do you have someone waiting for you on Earth? A mate, perhaps?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I find myself hopping the answer is no," Lyra said with a candor that made Marcus miss his next handhold and nearly send them spinning off course. "Your Highness," Marcus began. "Lyra," she corrected automatically. "Lyra, I don't think this is appropriate." "What's appropriate about any of this?" she asked, gesturing at the vast emptiness around them. "We're floating through space in borrowed time, pursued by raiders who want to sell me to the highest bidder. If not now, when am I supposed to tell you that I find you fascinating?" Marcus caught hold of a support strut on the mining station and pulled them both to safety on its hull. "We need to focus on staying alive." "I am alive," Lyra said, her purple eyes bright through her helmet visor. "More alive than I've felt in years of diplomatic functions and arranged meetings with boring princes. Do you know what it's like to have every moment of your life planned by others?" Marcus found an airlock and began checking its systems. "I imagine it gets frustrating." Frustrating doesn't begin to describe it. Until today, I've never made a single decision that mattered. But right now, floating here with you, I feel like I'm finally choosing something for myself. The airlock controls were dark, but Marcus found a manual override. He cranked the wheel, and to his relief, the outer door opened. "Choosing what?" "Who I want to be with when the universe tries to kill me," Lyra said simply. They cycled through the airlock, and Marcus held his breath until the inner door sealed and atmosphere began to flow. His suit sensors showed breathable air, though it was stale and thin. They could remove their helmets. "Lucky break," Marcus said, pulling off his helmet and breathing deeply. The air tasted of metal and recycled filters, but it was better than their limited suit supply. Lyra removed her helmet as well, shaking out her silver hair. "Do you believe in luck, Marcus?" "I believe in being prepared," Marcus replied, checking the station's layout on his tactical display. "Looks like this place has been abandoned for about 5 years. Mining operation went bust when the ore played out. But it still has power. Emergency power only, enough to keep life support running and maybe some basic systems." Marcus moved to what looked like a control room. "If I can access the communications array, I might be able to send a focused transmission to Earth." Lyra followed him, moving with that graceful way she had that made her seem to float even in artificial gravity. "You're remarkable, do you know that?" Marcus tried to ignore the way his pulse quickened when she stood close to him. "I'm just doing my job." "No," Lyra said, placing her hand on his arm. "Your job was to escort me to meetings and keep me safe during formal events. Your job did not include spacewalks through asteroid fields or defending me against Krathari raiders." Marcus focused on the communication console, trying to coax it to life with what little power the station had available. The job description was pretty broad. "Marcus," Lyra's voice was gentle but insistent, "look at me." Against his better judgment, he did. Her purple eyes held something that made his chest tight. "What?" "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything you've done today, for treating me like a person instead of just a diplomatic asset, for risking your life to keep me safe, for making me feel like more than just a princess for the first time in my life." Before Marcus could respond, his motion detectors chimed. Through the station's small viewport, he could see Krathari search teams moving systematically through the nearby asteroids. They had maybe an hour before the raiders reached their hiding spot. "We need to move," Marcus said, turning back to the communication panel. "I'll try to get a message through to Earth Defense, but even if they receive it, we're looking at hours before any rescue arrives." "Hours we don't have," Lyra observed. "Exactly." Marcus managed to bring the communication system online, but it was weak and intermittent. He began composing an emergency message with their location and situation. While he worked, Lyra explored the small station. It had been built for functionality, not comfort, with cramped corridors and basic amenities. She found what looked like a tiny recreation area with a few chairs and an old data terminal. "Marcus," she called, "come look at this." He joined her at the terminal, which was displaying a map of the local asteroid field. "What am I looking at?" "Escape routes," Lyra said. "According to this, there's a network of old mining tunnels that connect several of the larger asteroids. Look here," she pointed to a section of the map. "This tunnel leads to an asteroid with an automated cargo launcher. If it still works, we could use it to reach Luna Station." Marcus studied the map more carefully. "That's brilliant, but it would mean leaving the station and going EVA again. The tunnels aren't pressurized." "Better than waiting here for the Krathari to find us," Lyra pointed out. Marcus had to admit she was right. He gathered what supplies he could find in the station: emergency kits, extra oxygen canisters, emergency rations, and a small tool kit. While he worked, Lyra sat in one of the chairs, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "You," she said without hesitation. "I'm wondering what your life is like when you're not protecting wayward princesses." Marcus sealed the supply pack and checked their suit systems. "Pretty quiet, actually. I read a lot, practice martial arts, work on my language skills." "Sounds lonely." "I prefer solitary activities." "Do you?" Lyra stood and moved closer to him. "Or have you just never found someone worth sharing them with?" Marcus felt that familiar flutter in his chest. "Your Highness." "Lyra." "Lyra, we really should focus on the situation at hand." She reached up and touched his face gently, her blue skin warm against his cheek. "Marcus, may I tell you something that might sound strange?" "What?" "I've lived my entire life surrounded by people who were paid to be near me. Guards, servants, diplomats, tutors, people who smiled and said the right things because it was their duty. But you, when you look at me, I don't see duty in your eyes." Marcus found himself leaning into her touch. "What do you see?" "Interest, genuine interest in who I am, not what I represent, and something else." "What?" "The same thing you see when you look at me, I think." Before Marcus could process what she meant, the station's proximity alarms began beeping. Through the viewport, he could see Krathari searchlights much closer than before. "They're systematically checking every structure," Marcus said, moving back to his equipment. "We need to leave now." They suited up quickly, but as Marcus checked Lyra's gear, she caught his hands in hers. "Marcus, when this is over, when we're safe, I want to have a proper conversation with you." "About what?" "About how I feel about you, about how you feel about me, about what happens next." Marcus stared at her through their helmet visors. "Lyra, I'm just a security specialist. You're a princess. There's no what happens next for people like us." "Says who?" she challenged. "My father, the diplomatic corps, or you?" Marcus didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he led her to the station's secondary airlock, the one that connected to the tunnel system. The tunnels were old and narrow, clearly designed for mining robots rather than people in EVA suits. "Stay close," Marcus said as they entered the first tunnel. "And keep your lights low. The Krathari might pick up the reflection." They moved through the tunnel system like rats in a maze, following the map Lyra had memorized. The tunnels branched and twisted, sometimes opening into large excavated caverns, sometimes narrowing to barely suit-width passages. "Tell me about your family," Lyra said as they navigated a particularly tricky section. "Why?" "Because talking makes this less terrifying, and because I want to know everything about you." Marcus helped her through a tight squeeze between tunnel walls. "My parents were diplomats. That's how I learned Zephyrian. They believed in understanding other species." "Are they proud of what you do?" "They died when I was 20, Marcus said quietly. "Shuttle accident during a diplomatic mission to the Centauri colonies." Lyra stopped moving and turned to face him. "Marcus, I'm sorry, I didn't know." "It's why I do this work," Marcus continued. "They believed that understanding between species was the key to peace. I try to honor that. By protecting aliens like me." "By protecting people like you," Marcus corrected. "Species doesn't matter, people matter." Lyra stared at him through her visor for a long moment. "No wonder I find you so attractive." "What?" "You see me as a person first. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" They reached a junction in the tunnel system, and Marcus checked their position against the map. This way should lead to the cargo launcher asteroid. As they continued through the tunnels, Lyra kept the conversation going. "What do you do for fun, Marcus?" "I told you, I read, I study." "No, what do you do for fun? When you're not being responsible and dutiful, what makes you happy?" Marcus considered the question as they floated through a large cavern that had been hollowed out by mining equipment. "I like to cook, actually." "Really?" "I find it relaxing, taking simple ingredients and turning them into something better than the sum of their parts." "I'd like to try your cooking someday," Lyra said, "when this is over." "Lyra, when this is over," she repeated firmly. "I'm not giving up on that idea just because you think it's complicated." They reached the end of the tunnel system, emerging onto the surface of another asteroid. In the distance, Marcus could see the angular structure of an automated cargo launcher, exactly where the map had indicated. "There," he pointed. "If that thing still works, we can launch ourselves to Luna Station in a cargo pod." "And if it doesn't work?" Marcus checked his oxygen gauge. They had maybe 3 hours left. "Then we hope Earth defense finds us before our air runs out." As they made their way across the asteroid's surface toward the cargo launcher, Lyra suddenly grabbed Marcus's arm. "Look," she whispered. Behind them, on the asteroid they'd just left, Krathari searchlights were emerging from the tunnel entrance. The raiders had followed their trail. "Run," Marcus said. They bounded across the asteroid's surface in the low gravity, each leap covering dozens of meters. Behind them, the Krathari had spotted them and were giving chase, their powerful legs and military training making them surprisingly fast despite the difficult terrain. "The launcher," Marcus gasped into his comm. "If we can reach it first." "Marcus," Lyra said, her voice strangely calm, "I need to tell you something." "What?" Marcus pulled her behind a rocky outcropping as energy beams began flashing past them. "If we don't make it out of this alive, I want you to know that today has been the best day of my life." Marcus stared at her. "We're being shot at by alien raiders, and you call this the best day of your life?" "Because I'm spending it with you," she said simply. Because for the first time ever, I get to choose who I'm with and what I'm doing. And I choose you, Marcus Chen, I choose you. Before Marcus could respond, a Krathari energy beam exploded against the rock just above their heads, showering them with debris. The cargo launcher was still 50 meters away, and their pursuers were closing fast. "Stay here," Marcus said, checking his sidearm. "What are you doing?" "Buying us time." Marcus prepared to leap from cover and engage the Krathari directly. But Lyra caught his arm. "No, we go together or we don't go at all." "Lyra, that's suicide." "Then it's suicide together," she said firmly. "I told you, Marcus, I'm choosing you. That means all the way." Looking into her determined, purple eyes, Marcus realized that Princess Lyrale of the Zephyrian royal house was not the delicate flower he'd been assigned to protect. She was something much more dangerous and wonderful than that. She was someone worth protecting. "Together, then," he said, and they broke from cover toward the cargo launcher, running for their lives through the darkness between worlds. The cargo launcher looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Rust and micrometeorite damage covered its surface, and several control panels were dark. But the main structure appeared intact, and Marcus could see cargo pods still in the loading bay. "Can you make it work?" Lyra asked as energy beams flashed around them from the pursuing Krathari. Marcus dove behind the launcher's control console and began frantically checking systems. "Maybe. The power core is still active, but I need to bypass about 6 safety protocols." "How long?" Another energy beam scorched the metal inches from Marcus's head. "Longer than we have." Lyra took position beside him, using her suit's emergency tools to help with the mechanical bypasses while Marcus worked on the electronic systems. "Marcus, when I was a child, my tutors told me stories about human warriors. They said humans were the only species that became more dangerous when cornered." "I'm a bodyguard, not a warrior," Marcus replied, rerouting power to the launcher's main systems. "You're human," Lyra said simply. "Same thing." The launcher's systems began coming online, one by one. Marcus could see the cargo pods in the loading bay, simple cylindrical containers designed to carry ore and supplies between asteroids. They weren't built for passengers, but they had basic life support systems. "There," Marcus pointed to the nearest pod. "If I can program it for Luna Station, we can ride it there. It'll be uncomfortable, but—" "Marcus," Lyra grabbed his arm and pointed. The Krathari had reached the launcher complex. 6 heavily armed raiders in military-grade suits were advancing on their position, using the launcher's support structures for cover. Their energy weapons were more powerful than Marcus's sidearm, and they had the numbers advantage. "Get to the pod," Marcus ordered, drawing his weapon. "I'll hold them off." "No," Lyra said firmly. "We discussed this, together or not at all." "Lyra, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. You think I'm going to sit in that pod and wait to see if you make it? You think I could live with myself if you died protecting me while I hid?" Marcus wanted to argue, but the Krathari were getting closer, and they didn't have time. "Fine, but stay behind me and do exactly what I say." They moved toward the pod bay together, using the launcher's machinery for cover. Marcus managed to drop one of the Krathari with a well-placed shot, but the others quickly adapted, spreading out to flank their position. "Marcus," Lyra said as they reached the pod bay, "I need to tell you something about Zephyrian physiology." "Kind of busy right now," Marcus replied, returning fire while trying to get the pod systems online. "We're stronger than we look," Lyra continued, "and we have better reflexes than most species expect." "That's nice," Marcus said, not really paying attention. The pod's life support was activating, but slowly. "What I'm trying to say is, I'm not as helpless as you think I am." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Lyra moved. One moment she was crouched behind him, the next she was flowing through the pod bay like liquid silver. A Krathari raider had tried to flank them from the right, and Lyra intercepted him with movements so fluid they looked like dancing. The raider outweighed her by at least 50 pounds and had military training, but Lyra moved around his attacks like smoke, using his own momentum against him. When his energy rifle swung toward Marcus, she redirected it with a gesture that looked almost casual, sending the beam wide. A moment later, the Krathari was unconscious on the deck, and Lyra was back at Marcus's side as if nothing had happened. "What the hell was that?" Marcus demanded. "Royal combat training," Lyra said calmly. Did I forget to mention it? All members of the Zephyrian royal family learn the old fighting arts. We're not just pretty faces. Marcus stared at her. You're a warrior, princess. I prefer diplomatically inclined fighter, Lyra replied with that pearl-bright smile. Now shall we continue with our escape? The cargo pod was finally ready. Marcus programmed it for Luna Station while Lyra watched for more Krathari. The pod's interior was cramped, designed for cargo rather than passengers, but it had seats and basic life support. In, Marcus ordered, helping Lyra into the pod. This is going to be a rough ride. I don't mind rough, Lyra said, settling into the seat beside him, as long as it's with you. Even in their desperate situation, she was still flirting with him. Marcus couldn't decide if that was brave or insane. He was starting to suspect it might be both. The pod launched with a force that pressed them back into their seats. Through the small viewport, Marcus could see the asteroid falling away behind them, along with the remaining Krathari raiders. They were free, at least for the moment. How long to Luna Station? Lyra asked. 4 hours, Marcus replied, checking the pod's navigation system. Our oxygen should last that long, but it'll be close. Lyra unbuckled her safety harness and moved closer to Marcus in the cramped space. 4 hours alone together. However will we pass the time? Marcus felt his pulse quicken. In the confined space, he was acutely aware of everything about her. The way she moved, the scent of jasmine that somehow clung to her even after hours in a recycled air environment suit, the way her silver hair caught the light from the pod's instruments. We should conserve oxygen, Marcus said weakly. Minimal talking. Minimal talking, Lyra agreed. But you haven't answered my question from earlier. What question? Do you have someone waiting for you on Earth, a mate? Marcus found himself unable to look away from her purple eyes. No, I don't. Good, Lyra said with satisfaction. That makes this much less complicated. Makes what less complicated? Instead of answering, Lyra moved even closer until she was close enough to touch. Marcus, may I ask you something else? What? Are humans capable of being attracted to other species? Romantically, I mean. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. That's a very personal question. I'm asking because I find myself quite attracted to you, and I'm hoping the feeling might be mutual. Marcus stared at her. Lyra, I'm your bodyguard. This is completely inappropriate. Why? Because you're a princess and I'm just a security specialist. Because we're from different species. Because it's my job to protect you, not. Not what? Lyra asked softly. Marcus couldn't finish the sentence. Because the truth was, he was attracted to her. Had been from the moment he'd met her. Her beauty was obvious, but it was more than that. Her intelligence, her courage, her sense of humor, the way she'd handled herself during their escape, everything about her fascinated him. Lyra, he said carefully, even if there were something between us, what would be the point? When this is over, you'll go back to Zephyr and I'll go back to Earth. We live in different worlds, literally. Do we? Lyra asked. I spend most of my time traveling between worlds on diplomatic missions, and you work for the Interstellar Security Service. Your job takes you all over the galaxy. Marcus hadn't thought about it that way. It's still complicated. The best things usually are, Lyra said. Marcus, look at me. He did, and immediately regretted it. Her purple eyes were warm with affection and something deeper. I know this is sudden, she continued. I know it's complicated, but in the past day you've shown me more genuine care and respect than anyone has in years. You've risked your life for me, not because it's your job, but because you care about me as a person. How could I not develop feelings for someone like that? Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. All the professional distance he'd been trying to maintain crumbled under the weight of her honesty. Lyra, he said softly, if we're going to have this conversation, I need you to understand something about humans. What? When we care about someone, really care about them, we tend to care completely. It's not just attraction or affection, it's everything. We become fiercely protective, completely devoted. Some people find it overwhelming. Lyra's smile was like starlight. Marcus, I am a Zephyrian princess. I've been trained from birth to handle overwhelming things. Try me. Marcus found himself leaning closer to her. Are you sure about this? Because once you open this door, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Lyra whispered. She reached up and touched his face again, her blue skin warm against his cheek. This time, Marcus didn't pull away. Instead, he covered her hand with his own. "This is crazy," he murmured. "Crazy can be good," Lyra replied. "Especially when the alternative is a lifetime of boring diplomatic functions and arranged marriages to princes who see me as a political asset rather than a person." "And you think I see you as a person?" "I know you do," Lyra said with certainty. "You've proven it over and over again today. The way you listen when I talk, the way you trust my judgment, the way you've treated me as an equal even in the middle of a crisis. Do you have any idea how rare that is for someone in my position?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing everything she'd said. "What exactly are you proposing here?" "I'm proposing that, when this is over, we don't just go back to our separate lives and pretend today never happened. I'm proposing that we explore whatever this is between us. Even though it's complicated." "Especially because it's complicated," Lyra said. "Simple things are boring. I've had enough boring to last several lifetimes." Marcus really looked at her. Not as a princess he was assigned to protect, but as a woman who'd shown incredible courage and grace under pressure. A woman who'd chosen to trust him completely, who'd fought beside him, who'd made him feel things he'd never felt before. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay. Okay, let's see where this leads. When we get back to civilization, we'll figure it out together." Lyra's smile was brilliant. "Together, I like the sound of that." She leaned forward and kissed him softly, her lips warm and alien and absolutely right against his. When they broke apart, Marcus felt like something fundamental had shifted in the universe. "So," Lyra said, settling back in her seat with a satisfied expression, "now that we've established that you're attracted to me, would you like to hear about some of the other things I find attractive about humans?" Marcus laughed despite their situation. "We still have 4 hours until we reach Luna Station." "Perfect," Lyra said with a grin that promised trouble. "I have a very detailed list." As their cargo pod continued its journey through space towards safety, Marcus found himself thinking that this assignment had definitely not gone according to plan. But looking at Lyra's face, illuminated by the soft glow of the pod's instruments, he couldn't bring himself to regret a single moment of it. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled past in their ancient patterns, and somewhere behind them, Earth continued its patient orbit around the sun. But inside the pod, Marcus felt like his world had fundamentally changed. He was no longer just a bodyguard protecting a client. He was a man who'd found someone worth protecting, and worth being protected by in return. "Tell me about this list," he said, settling back in his seat. Lyra's laugh was music in the confined space. "Well, first there's your dedication to duty, which I find incredibly attractive, but not nearly as attractive as the way you look when you're concentrating on something important." Marcus listened to her voice and watched the stars, and for the first time in his life, felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Luna Station appeared in their viewport like a sprawling metal city clinging to the moon's surface. Its lights twinkled against the stark lunar landscape, and Marcus had never seen anything more beautiful. Well, almost anything. There, he pointed through the pod's small window. "We made it." Lyra squeezed his hand. During the 4-hour journey, she'd somehow managed to move even closer to him in the cramped space, until they were sitting pressed together, sharing warmth and breath and quiet conversation. Her head rested against his shoulder, silver hair spilling across his chest. "I'm almost sad it's over," she murmured. "This has been the most honest conversation I've had in years." Marcus had to admit he felt the same way. In the safety of the pod, with nothing but time and space between them and the rest of the universe, they'd talked about everything. Her childhood on Zephyr, his training on Earth, their hopes and fears and dreams. She told him about the pressure of royal life, the constant scrutiny, the way people always wanted something from her. He'd shared his own struggles with loneliness, the difficulty of making real connections when your job required constant vigilance. "It doesn't have to be over," Marcus said softly. "The conversation, I mean." "No," Lyra agreed, tilting her face up to look at him. "It doesn't." The pod's communication system crackled to life. "Unidentified cargo pod, this is Luna Station Traffic Control. Please identify yourself and state your emergency status." Marcus reached for the communicator. "Luna Station, this is Marcus Chen, Interstellar Security Service. I'm escorting Princess Lyrale of Zephyr. We're survivors from a Krathari raid and request immediate assistance. There was a pause, then a flood of voices as Luna Station's control tower processed their situation. Within minutes, they were being guided to an emergency docking bay, with medical teams standing by. "Marcus," Lyra said as they prepared to dock, "what happens now?" "Now," Marcus checked his gear and prepared to disembark. "Now we debrief with station security, contact Earth and Zephyr to report what happened, and figure out how to get you safely back to Earth for the remainder of your diplomatic mission." "I mean with us," Lyra said quietly. "What happens with us?" Marcus looked at her, taking in her beautiful alien features, the way her purple eyes held both vulnerability and strength. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I want to find out." The pod docked with a gentle bump, and suddenly they were surrounded by Luna Station security personnel, medical teams, and what seemed like half the diplomatic corps. In the chaos of debriefing and medical checks, Marcus lost sight of Lyra for several hours. When he finally found her, she was in the station's diplomatic suite, surrounded by Zephyrian embassy staff and looking thoroughly overwhelmed by their attention. "Princess, you must rest," one of her attendants was saying. "The ordeal you've endured." "I'm fine," Lyra said firmly, but Marcus could see the exhaustion in her eyes. When she spotted him in the doorway, her face lit up with relief. "Marcus, there you are." "How are you feeling, Your Highness?" Marcus asked formally, aware of all the eyes watching them. "Much better now," Lyra replied, and there was something in her tone that made several of her attendants look between them with curiosity. "If I could have a moment to debrief Her Highness on security protocols for the remainder of her visit," Marcus began. "Of course," the chief attendant nodded. "Princess will be right outside if you need anything." When they were alone, Lyra immediately moved to Marcus's side. "I was wondering when you were going to rescue me from my rescuers." "They're just concerned about you," Marcus said, though he had to admit he was relieved to be alone with her again. "I know," Lyra sighed. "But after spending the day making my own decisions and having real conversations, it's hard to go back to being managed every moment." "What did you tell them about what happened?" "The truth, we were attacked by Krathari raiders, you saved my life multiple times, and we escaped through the asteroid field." Lyra paused. "I didn't mention the personal aspects of our conversation." "Probably wise," Marcus agreed. "Your embassy staff might not understand." Lyra moved closer to him. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "What?" "Was what happened between us in that pod real? Or was it just adrenaline and proximity and fear?" Marcus looked into her purple eyes and saw genuine uncertainty there. "It was real, Lyra, at least for me." "For me too," she said with relief. "I was worried that when we got back to civilization, you might decide it was all a mistake." "The only mistake would be pretending it didn't happen," Marcus said, reaching out to take her hand. "But we need to be realistic about the challenges." "Such as?" "Your father, for one. The King of Zephyr probably has strong opinions about who his daughter gets involved with." Lyra laughed. "You might be surprised. My father has always told me that character matters more than status, and after today I think your character speaks for itself." Before Marcus could respond, there was a knock on the door. "Princess," came a voice from outside, "we have a priority communication from Zephyr. His Majesty wishes to speak with you." Lyra and Marcus exchanged looks. "Showtime," Lyra murmured, then louder, "Come in." The embassy staff entered with a portable communication terminal. The screen flickered to life, revealing a tall Zephyrian male with silver hair and the same purple eyes as Lyra. King Valdris of Zephyr looked exactly like what Marcus imagined an alien monarch should look like: regal, imposing, and slightly intimidating. "Lyrale," the king said, relief evident in his voice. "When we received word of the attack, we feared the worst." "I'm fine, father," Lyra replied, "thanks to my bodyguard." The king's gaze shifted to Marcus. "Ah yes, Specialist Chen, I've received a preliminary report from your superiors. They speak very highly of your actions today." Marcus bowed formally. "I was just doing my job, Your Majesty." "Were you?" the king asked with what might have been amusement. "From what I understand, your job didn't technically include spacewalks through asteroid fields or single-handedly fighting off Krathari raiders." "The situation required adaptation, sir," Marcus replied carefully. King Valdris studied him for a long moment. Specialist Chen, my daughter tells me you saved her life multiple times today. Is that accurate? We saved each other's lives, Your Majesty. The princess showed remarkable courage and skill. Did she? The king looked at Lyra with something that might have been pride. Lyrale, did you put your royal combat training to good use? I may have incapacitated a Krathari raider or two, Lyra admitted. Excellent, I was wondering when you'd have occasion to use those skills. The king turned back to Marcus. Specialist Chen, I would like to formally thank you for protecting my daughter, if there's anything the Crown of Zephyr can do to show our gratitude. Marcus felt Lyra's eyes on him. This was it, the moment where he could ask for anything. Wealth, position, honors. Instead, he heard himself saying, Your Majesty, I would like permission to continue serving as the princess's personal security specialist for the remainder of her diplomatic mission. Interesting, the king mused. And why is that? Marcus chose his words carefully. Because today has shown me that the princess faces unique security challenges, and I believe I'm uniquely qualified to address them. Also, because I've come to respect her greatly as a person, and I would consider it an honor to continue serving in that capacity. The king was quiet for a long moment, his purple eyes moving between Marcus and Lyra. Marcus had the distinct feeling he was being evaluated for something far more significant than bodyguard duty. Lyrale, the king said finally, what are your thoughts on this arrangement? I think it's an excellent idea, father, Lyra replied, and Marcus caught the slight emphasis she put on the word excellent. I see. The king nodded slowly. Very well, Specialist Chen. You have my permission to continue as my daughter's personal protection specialist. In fact, I'm promoting you to Chief of Personal Security for the remainder of her mission. Thank you, Your Majesty, Marcus said, trying to keep his expression professionally neutral while internally celebrating. However, the king continued, I should warn you that protecting Princess Lyrale may prove to be a more complex assignment than you anticipate. How so, sir? The king's smile was enigmatic. My daughter has always been quite determined when she sets her mind on something. I suspect you'll find that trait both challenging and rewarding. Lyra blushed slightly, but didn't look away from her father's knowing gaze. Is there anything else you need to tell me about today's events? The king asked, looking directly at Lyra. Not at this time, father, Lyra replied diplomatically. I see. Well then, I'll leave you both to rest and recover. Lyrale will speak again tomorrow about the remainder of your mission. Specialist Chen, welcome to the service of the Zephyrian Crown. The communication ended, leaving Marcus and Lyra alone again. Well, Lyra said after a moment, that went better than expected. Did it? Marcus asked. I felt like your father was trying to tell me something. He was, Lyra said with a smile. He was telling you that he approves of you and that he's not entirely surprised by this development. What do you mean? Marcus, my father has been trying to find me a suitable partner for years. Every prince and nobleman in the galaxy has been presented as a potential match, and I've rejected them all. Do you think he hasn't noticed that the first person I've ever shown real interest in is a human warrior who saved my life? Marcus stared at her. You think he planned this? I think my father is very wise, and he knows his daughter very well, Lyra said. I also think he's been waiting for me to find someone who sees me as Lyra first and Princess second. And you think that's me? I know that's you, Lyra said, moving closer to him. Marcus, you've seen me at my worst today, frightened, exhausted, running for my life, and you still look at me like I'm something precious. Do you have any idea how that feels for someone who's spent her whole life being valued for her title? Marcus reached up and touched her face gently. You are something precious, Lyra, title or no title. She leaned into his touch. So what happens now, Chief of Personal Security? Now, Marcus said, we finish your diplomatic mission together, and we see where this leads us. Together, Lyra agreed. I like the sound of that more every time you say it. There was another knock on the door, followed by voices announcing that the Earth Defense Fleet had arrived to escort them back to Earth safely. Their moment of privacy was ending, but Marcus found he didn't mind. He had Lyra, he had a mission, and for the first time in his life, he had a future that excited him more than it frightened him. Ready to go home? He asked. With you, Lyra smiled that pearl-bright smile that had been making his heart race since the moment they met. Lead the way. As they prepared to leave Luna Station, Marcus reflected on how much had changed in just one day. He'd started as a bodyguard protecting a client and ended up as something much more complicated and wonderful. He was a man in love with a princess who loved him back, and somehow that seemed like the most natural thing in the universe. 6 months after the Krathari attack, Marcus stood in the kitchen of his apartment in New Geneva, carefully preparing what he hoped would be the perfect dinner. The recipe was a fusion of Earth and Zephyrian cuisine, something he'd been working on for weeks with input from Lyra's cultural attaché. The apartment was larger than his previous place, a necessity since he'd been promoted to Director of Interspecies Security Services following his successful protection of Princess Lyrale. The promotion had come with a substantial raise, diplomatic immunity, and most importantly, permission to continue working closely with the Zephyrian embassy. "Marcus," Lyra's voice called from the living room, "whatever you're cooking smells incredible." "Almost ready," Marcus called back, adding the final garnish to the dishes. "How did the trade summit go today?" "Boring beyond belief," Lyra replied, appearing in the doorway. Even after 6 months, the sight of her still made Marcus's heart skip. She'd changed from her formal diplomatic attire into something more casual, a flowing dress that complemented her blue skin and silver hair. "I spent 4 hours listening to tariff negotiations. I kept wishing you were there to rescue me from the tedium." "I was busy rescuing you from the 3 assassination attempts we intercepted this week," Marcus replied, setting their plates on the small dining table he'd set up by the window. "Only 3?" Lyra asked with mock disappointment. "I'm losing my touch. Last month there were 5. It had become a running joke between them, but the truth was that Princess Lyrale had become one of the most targeted individuals in the galaxy. Her success in negotiating trade agreements between Earth and Zephyr had made her enemies among several militant factions who preferred conflict to cooperation. Marcus's job had evolved from simple bodyguard work to running a full security operation. "Sit," Marcus said, pulling out her chair. "Try this and tell me what you think." Lyra took a bite and her eyes widened with delight. "Marcus, this is amazing. What is it?" "Earth salmon with Zephyrian twilight spices, served over lunar rice with a sauce made from those berries you brought from your home world." "You've been experimenting again," Lyra said with a smile that made Marcus's chest warm. "I love it when you cook for me. It's so much better than embassy food." "Everything is better than embassy food," Marcus replied, taking his seat across from her. "Even military rations." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching Earth's sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink through their window. Their relationship had settled into something that felt natural and right, despite the complications of their different species and social positions. "Marcus," Lyra said eventually, "I need to tell you something." "What's wrong?" Marcus immediately went into alert mode, scanning her face for signs of concern. "Nothing's wrong," Lyra laughed. "Stop looking like you're expecting another assassination attempt. It's good news, actually." "Okay," Marcus said, though he didn't entirely relax. "What is it?" "My father is coming to Earth next week for the formal signing of the new trade agreement. He's specifically requested to meet with you." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "Meet with me, why?" Lyra set down her fork and reached across the table to take his hand. "Because I told him about us, about how we feel about each other and what we want for our future." "Lyra," Marcus said carefully, "what exactly did you tell him?" "The truth," she replied simply. "That I'm in love with a human warrior who makes me feel like the best version of myself. That you're the first person who's ever loved me for who I am rather than what I represent. That I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Marcus stared at her, his mind racing. "And what did he say?" "He said he wants to meet the human who captured his daughter's heart and discuss the political implications of a royal marriage to an Earth citizen." "Marriage?" Marcus's voice came out slightly strangled. Lyra's expression became uncertain. "I'm sorry, was I being presumptuous? I thought after 6 months together, after everything we've shared." "No," Marcus said quickly, squeezing her hand. "Not presumptuous at all. I've been thinking about marriage too. I just didn't expect your father to be discussing political implications." "What did you expect?" Marcus laughed, though it sounded slightly hysterical even to him. "I expected him to have me quietly eliminated for corrupting his daughter." "Marcus," Lyra said gently, My father isn't some tyrannical monarch from an ancient Earth story. He's a pragmatist who wants his daughter to be happy. And he's also a political leader who understands the symbolic value of a marriage between Zephyrian royalty and a respected Earth citizen. Symbolic value? Think about it. Lyra leaned forward, her purple eyes bright with excitement. A marriage between us would represent the ultimate expression of Earth-Zephyr cooperation. It would strengthen our alliance, encourage trade and cultural exchange, and show the galaxy that different species can not only work together, but build lives together. Marcus considered this. Your father sees our relationship as a diplomatic opportunity. Among other things, yes, Lyra admitted. But mainly, he sees it as his daughter being happy for the first time in her adult life. Everything else is secondary to that. And what do you see it as? Marcus asked. Lyra's smile was radiant. I see it as the beginning of the most beautiful adventure two people can share. I see it as love, Marcus, pure and simple. Marcus stood up and walked around the table, pulling Lyra to her feet and into his arms. In that case, Princess Lyrale of Zephyr, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I thought you'd never ask, Lyra laughed, reaching up to kiss him. Yes, absolutely yes. They held each other for a long moment, surrounded by the warm light of Earth's evening sun and the certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. So, Marcus said finally, what exactly should I expect when I meet with your father? Oh, the usual, Lyra said casually. Discussion of dowries, marriage customs, the fact that you'll technically become Zephyrian nobility by marriage, security arrangements for the wedding. Wait, what was that part about nobility? Lyra grinned mischievously. Did I forget to mention that? When you marry me, you'll become Prince Consort Marcus of the House of Valdris, complete with a title, ceremonial duties, and probably a few more assassination attempts. Marcus groaned. More assassination attempts. Look at it this way, Lyra said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss his nose. Job security. You'll never run out of people to protect me from. I suppose there are worse problems to have, Marcus admitted. Much worse, Lyra agreed. Now, shall we finish dinner and then you can tell me more about these marriage thoughts you've been having? What kind of thoughts? Well, for starters, where would you like to live? Earth, Zephyr. We could split our time between worlds or perhaps find somewhere new entirely. As they returned to their dinner, Marcus found himself marveling at how completely his life had changed since that first day at the Zephyrian embassy. He'd started as a simple bodyguard and ended up as something he'd never imagined possible. A man in love with an alien princess who loved him back, planning a future that would span star systems. Lyra, he said as they finished eating, can I ask you something? Always. That first day when we met, were you really flirting with me, or was I imagining it? Lyra laughed, the sound like silver bells in the evening air. Marcus, I was absolutely shameless. I flirted with you constantly. Even during our escape from the Krathari. Especially during our escape from the Krathari, Lyra said with a grin. Nothing like mortal peril to make a woman realize what she wants. And what did you want? You, she said simply. I wanted you, Marcus Chen. From the moment I met you, I knew you were someone special, someone worth taking risks for. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand again. The feeling was mutual, you know. Even when I was trying to be professional, even when I told myself it was impossible, I couldn't stop thinking about you. What were you thinking? That you were the most beautiful, brave, intelligent woman I'd ever met, and that I was completely out of my league. You were right about the beautiful, brave, and intelligent part, Lyra said with mock seriousness. But wrong about being out of your league. If anything, I was the one who was out of my league. Do you know how rare it is to find someone who sees past the title to the person underneath? For someone like you, probably very rare. Unbelievably rare, Lyra confirmed. Which is why I wasn't about to let you get away, hence all the shameless flirting. I'm glad you didn't let me get away, Marcus said softly. Never, Lyra promised. I'm keeping you forever, Marcus Chen. You're stuck with me. I can think of worse fates, Marcus replied, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing her knuckles gently. Later that evening, as they sat together on the couch watching Earth's stars appear in the darkening sky, Marcus reflected on the strange path that had brought them together. A routine diplomatic assignment had become the adventure of a lifetime, and somewhere between the asteroid field and Luna Station, He'd found not just love, but a purpose larger than himself. "What are you thinking about?" Lyra asked, curled against his side with her head on his shoulder. "The future," Marcus replied. "Our future." "And what does that look like to you?" Marcus considered the question. "Adventures," he said finally. "Lots of adventures, probably some danger, definitely some politics, definitely more of your shameless flirting." "I don't flirt," Lyra protested with mock indignation. "You're flirting right now," Marcus pointed out. "I'm being affectionate," Lyra corrected. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Flirting is what I did when I was trying to get your attention," Lyra explained, tracing patterns on his chest with her finger. "Being affectionate is what I do now that I have it." "I like both," Marcus admitted. "Good," Lyra said with satisfaction, "because you're going to get both for the rest of your life." As Earth's two moons rose over New Geneva, casting silver light through their window, Marcus held Lyra close and thought about how perfectly everything had worked out. He'd been assigned to protect an alien princess, and she'd ended up protecting his heart in return. It was, he decided, the best assignment he'd ever had. "Lyra, MMMs, when we get married, are you going to stop flirting with me?" She lifted her head to look at him, her purple eyes sparkling with mischief. "Marcus, my dear, wonderful, naive future husband, I'm going to flirt with you for the rest of our lives. After all, I have a reputation to maintain." "What reputation?" "As the Zephyrian princess who fell in love with her bodyguard," Lyra said with a grin, "and spent their entire escape flirting with him while they were running for their lives." Marcus laughed and pulled her closer. "I love you, Princess Lyrale of Zephyr." "And I love you, Prince Consort Marcus Chen," she replied, settling back into his arms. "Now and always." Outside their window, the stars shone down on Earth like diamonds scattered across black silk, and somewhere among them, Zephyr waited for its princess to return home with her human prince. But for now, in the quiet comfort of their shared apartment, Marcus and Lyra were content to simply be together, planning their future and remembering the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with a simple assignment: protect the alien princess. It had become something infinitely more precious: protect each other, love each other, and build a life together that would bridge worlds and species. And Marcus couldn't wait to see what adventures tomorrow would bring.